You know that saying? The one about your past always catching up with you. It's not just a cliche whispered by grandparents to keep you on the straight and narrow. It's a promise. A debt that comes due when you least expect it, with an interest rate that will bankrupt your entire life. My life imploded 10 years into a marriage I thought was unshakable. All because of things I did before I even knew his name. My name is Clara. I'm 32. And my husband, Liam, just found out I've slept with over 50 men. Liam and I met when I was 22, fresh out of art school and trying to pass as a grown-up. He was a history teacher at the high school near my first apartment. Sweet, a little shy, with this quiet intensity in his eyes that made you feel like you were the only person in the room. We'd see each other at the same coffee shop every morning. He'd be grading papers, his brow furrowed in concentration. I'd be sketching in my notepad, pretending not to notice him. Eventually, he worked up the courage to ask me out. What made him different was how untouched he was. He saw the world in terms of right and wrong, of stories with clear beginnings and endings. He was a man of principles, of quiet convictions. He was literally a virgin when we met. Meanwhile, I'd been around, way around. If I'm being brutally honest with myself, which I'm now forced to be, the number was probably closer to 60. I never told him. It just seemed unnecessary. What good could possibly come from him knowing? Knowing about the spontaneous trips to Mexico with men whose last names I never learned? The nights that blurred into mornings in strangers' apartments? That time with my ex-boyfriend's much older uncle? God, I was a mess. A beautiful, chaotic mess, but a mess all the same. But that wasn't me anymore. The second I met Liam, something inside me shifted. It clicked into place. I saw in his steady, kind eyes a future I suddenly wanted more than anything. Something real, something clean. When we started getting serious, he asked about my past. I kept it vague. A few boyfriends, I'd said, tracing patterns on his hand. Nothing special. It wasn't technically a lie, was it? The boyfriends weren't special. I just conveniently omitted the dozens of other encounters that didn't qualify as relationships. Besides, he seemed so happy. His face would light up when he'd talk about us, about how our connection felt like something rare, something destined. Why would I tarnish that? Why would I introduce the ghosts of my past into the beautiful, clean house we were building for our future? We got married after 2 years. We bought a small, charming house with a garden in the back. We got a golden retriever we named Atticus. Everything was perfect. I transformed. I became Clara, Liam's wife. Reliable, faithful, the kind of woman his mother adored. I even befriended the other wives in our neighborhood. Between us, most of them are total snooze fests. Their lives revolve around organic grocery swaps and discussions about minivans. But I played the part. I hosted book clubs. I brought casseroles to new neighbors. No one would ever guess what I used to be. And I never, ever cheated on Liam. Not once. I was a good wife. I adored him. Not even when Julian, a visiting artist at the gallery where I worked, made it painfully obvious he wanted something more during that work trip to Chicago. Not even when my most significant ex, a musician named Dante, messaged me on social media saying he was in town and wanted to catch up. I chose Liam. Every single day, for 10 years. That has to be worth something, doesn't it? Apparently not. Apparently, a decade of loyalty can be erased by one stupid, drunken game night. All it took was one night. I should have known better. I should have known you can't mix worlds. My carefully curated life with Liam was one world. My messy, chaotic past, embodied by my college friends, was another. They were never meant to collide. Liam had met some of my friends before, but never the core group, Jenna, Alex, and Maya. The ones who had been there for the worst of it. The ones who knew the real me. We were drinking Malbec, laughing, crowded around the fireplace in our living room. It felt just like old times. For a moment, I forgot I was a 32-year-old woman with a mortgage. I was 21 again, reckless and free. Then Alex, always the instigator, grinned. Okay, let's play. Never have I ever. A chorus of groans and cheers went up. Liam smiled, a little uncertainly, but played along. He was a good sport. He loved seeing me happy. The first few rounds were innocent. Never have I ever gotten a speeding ticket. Never have I ever skipped work to go to the beach. Then Jenna, who never developed a filter, took her turn. She swirled her wine, a glint in her eye. Never have I ever slept with more than 10 people. My heart stopped. Time slowed down. I saw it all happen in slow motion. Alex put a finger down, Maya put a finger down, and I, without thinking, fueled by wine and nostalgia, put my finger down along with Jenna. Silence. Not a complete silence, but the kind where the air gets thick and heavy. The cheerful chatter died. I looked up and saw Liam staring at me. Just staring. His friendly, accommodating smile had vanished. In its place was a look of pure, unadulterated confusion. Like I'd just started speaking a foreign language. He looked at my finger, then back at my face. Wait, what? Jenna, oblivious, just laughed. Oh, come on, Liam. We were wild in college. But the damage was done. The first crack in the foundation had appeared, and the questions that followed were like aftershocks, each one wider and more destructive than the last. Never have I ever, Maya said, trying to lighten the mood but failing spectacularly, had a threesome. Jenna's finger went down. And, after a split second of gut-wrenching hesitation, so did mine. I watched Liam's face transform. It was like watching a photograph burn from the edges inward. The confusion hardened into disbelief, then into something else, something I couldn't quite read. Hurt? Disgust? Jenna, who could never ever keep her mouth shut, saw his reaction. She must have thought she was helping. Liam, honey, don't look so shocked, she said, getting up and pulling him toward the kitchen. Clara was a legend back in the day. We have to tell you the story about the visiting professor. As they walked into the kitchen, their voices dropping to hushed whispers, I sat frozen on the sofa. Alex and Maya were trying not to look at me. The wine in my glass suddenly tasted like acid. I knew. In that moment, sitting there in my perfect living room, surrounded by the perfect life I had built, I knew it was over. My marriage was about to change forever. Liam's whole thing, his whole beautiful, naive view of the world, was built on finding someone who saw intimacy the way he did, as something special, meaningful. Not something you did with a stranger against the wall of a club bathroom because you were bored. He wasn't necessarily looking for a virgin. He was looking for someone who valued the same things. Someone pure of heart, if not of body. And I had let him believe I was that person. When they came back from the kitchen, Liam wouldn't look at me. His face was a pale, tight mask. The drive home was a ghost ride in our own car, so silent I could hear the frantic pounding of my own heart in my ears. Part of me wanted to scream, to rage that this wasn't fair. Why should what happened before him matter? It had nothing to do with him, with us. Another part, a quieter, colder part, knew I had done this. I had messed up. I had built our entire world on a lie of omission, but mostly, I was just terrified. Terrified of losing him. Terrified of losing this life, the only truly good, stable thing I had ever had. When we got home, he walked straight into the living room and stood in the middle of the floor, his back to me. The silence was an active thing. It was pressing in on me, suffocating me. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. His voice was hollow. Were you ever going to tell me? That was it. That was the question that broke me. Tears I had been holding back streamed down my face. I started talking, stumbling over words, trying to explain. I was afraid. I was so afraid of losing you. It was before you, Liam. It doesn't matter. I'm a different person now. That person isn't me anymore. He finally turned to look at me, and my heart shattered. He was looking at me like I was a complete stranger, like he'd never seen me before in his life. He didn't say another word. He just walked to the linen closet, pulled out a blanket and a pillow, and went to the couch. I still can't stop replaying that night. The way everything I had worked so hard to build for a decade unraveled in a matter of minutes. The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. A quiet, domestic nightmare. Liam moved through our house like a ghost. He was there, but he wasn't. We existed in a cycle of icy silence, then sudden bursts of interrogation, then more silence. One morning, as I was making coffee, he spoke from the doorway. Was I just some project for you? He asked, his voice flat. The nice guy you decided to settle for after you had all your fun? No, Liam, no. You were different. You were special. How many? He asked another night, as we were pretending to watch television. What? How many, Clara? What was the final count? I don't know. I didn't keep a list. 50? 60? It doesn't matter. Effed. It doesn't matter? He repeated, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping his lips. Of course it matters. It reframes everything. The worst was one night when I found him sitting in the dark, staring out the window. Did you ever even love me? He asked, his voice breaking on the last word. Or was I just convenient? A way to change your image? That one felt like a physical blow. Of course I loved him. I still love him more than anything. But how do you prove that? How do you convince someone of a truth when they now question the very foundation of every memory you've ever shared? Our bedroom became the coldest place in the house. A tomb. He started going to bed long after I was asleep and getting up before I woke. If I tried to reach for him in the night, his whole body would go rigid. When we did have sex, which became rare and painful, it was mechanical. He was just going through the motions. He stopped looking at me. He stopped asking what I liked, stopped making sure I was there with him. He was just finishing a task. Afterward, he'd roll away immediately, turning his back to me instead of holding me like he used to. One night, after another one of those empty, disconnected encounters, I finally broke. What is happening to us? I demanded, my voice raw with desperation. You won't even cuddle me anymore. He stared at the ceiling for a long, long time. I thought he wasn't going to answer. Then he spoke, and his words were colder than the empty space between us. I used to think what we had was special, he said, his voice devoid of emotion. That the way you responded to me, the way we connected, was something unique to us, something sacred. He finally turned his head to look at me, his eyes empty. Now, I just know you've done all this with dozens of other men. Strangers. How am I supposed to feel special? How is any of this supposed to feel real? It was different, I insisted, tears welling up again. That was just physical. With you? With you? It means something. Does it? He asked, his voice flat. Or am I just the guy who was good enough to marry when you decided you were done playing the field? I tried to fight for us. God, I tried. I launched Operation Win Liam back. Pathetic, I know, but I was desperate. I started with seduction. I bought expensive, scandalous lingerie I never would have worn before. I cooked his favorite meal, braised short ribs, and opened a bottle of the good wine we were saving. I put on the playlist from our wedding. He came home from work to candlelight, music, and me, wearing practically nothing. For a single, fleeting second, I saw a flicker of the old desire in his eyes. A flash of the man who used to look at me like I was magic. Then it was gone. Extinguished. He shut it down, and a mask of careful neutrality fell over his face. What's all this? He asked. I thought we could have a special night, I said, trying to keep my voice from trembling. Just us. He looked around at my efforts, at the candles, the wine. Then his eyes landed back on me, taking in the black lace. Special, he repeated, and the word tasted like poison in his mouth. Right, just us, and the ghosts of 60 other men. I felt like he had slapped me. That's not fair. Ever? Isn't it? He shot back, walking past me to the fridge and grabbing a beer, ignoring the wine I had so carefully poured. You know what's not fair, Clara? Not being able to look at my own wife without wondering. Wondering if every move you make, every sound you make in our bed, is something you perfected with someone else first. Wondering if anything about us was ever really ours. He slept in the guest room that night. I sobbed into my pillow, humiliated and heartbroken. My grand gesture had backfired spectacularly. I was no longer his wife. I was just a performer, and he was no longer a willing audience. After the seduction disaster, I tried a new approach, denial. I acted like everything was normal. I chattered about my day at the gallery. I made his favorite meals. I asked about the difficult students in his history class. I pretended the massive, wounded elephant in the room didn't exist. That strategy lasted about a week. What are you doing, Clara? He asked one night, pushing his plate away. Why are you acting like nothing happened? I'm trying, I whispered. I'm trying to get us back. There is no back, he said, his voice flat. There's only this, the mess you made. Our home, once my sanctuary, felt like an Arctic tundra. I was running out of ideas, running out of hope. Then I started noticing other changes. Small things. He started working late, or saying he was spending weekends helping his friend Mark with a project. His phone, which had always been left casually on the counter, was now either in his pocket or face down. One evening, I saw him swipe to unlock it, and I noticed the 6-dot grid of a passcode screen. He'd never had a passcode before. The irony was not lost on me. Now he was the one with secrets. I wanted to confront him, to scream at him, but what right did I have? I, the queen of secrets, had forfeited my right to demand transparency. But I was desperate, and desperation makes you do ugly things. One night, while he was in the shower, I did it. I picked up his phone. My hands were shaking. I know. Hypocritical. The woman who kept a secret for 12 years suddenly playing detective. His passcode was our anniversary. The irony was so thick it was suffocating. I opened his texts. My heart was a jackhammer against my ribs. And there it was. A name I didn't recognize. Sophie. There were lots of texts. Dozens. Enjoyed coffee today. Thanks for listening. You're a good man, Liam. You deserve to be happy. Thinking of you. Hope you're having an okay evening. Nothing explicitly romantic. Nothing overtly sexual. But it was worse, somehow. It was intimate. It was the emotional connection he no longer had with me. He was giving it to someone else. When he came out of the shower, a towel around his waist, I was sitting on the edge of the bed with his phone in my hand. His face hardened instantly. The tired sadness was replaced by a cold anger. Going through my phone now? Who's Sophie? I shot back, my voice shaking with a toxic cocktail of anger and fear. He snatched the phone from my hand. A friend. Someone I can actually talk to. Talk to about what? About what a terrible, lying wife you have. He ran a hand through his damp hair, looking utterly exhausted. Yes, Clara, exactly that. About how my entire marriage turned out to be a sham. About how I don't even know the woman I sleep next to. So you fix it by getting close to another woman? Is that your solution? His laugh was bitter and sharp. That's rich. Coming from you. Now you care about boundaries? Now you're worried about loyalty? I never cheated on you, I screamed, jumping to my feet. Never. No matter what I did before, I have been faithful to you every single day of our marriage. Physically, maybe, he said, his voice dropping to a quiet, lethal calm. But you cheated me out of the truth. You cheated me out of making an informed choice about who I was marrying. You stole 10 years of my life, Clara. You let me live in a fantasy you created. The fight exploded from there. All the tension, all the resentment of the past months erupted. I accused him of using my past as an excuse to have an emotional affair. He called me a manipulative liar who had trapped him into a life he never would have chosen if he'd known the truth. In the middle of it all, I asked the question I was most afraid of. Are you sleeping with her? My voice was small, broken. He looked me straight in the eye. His gaze didn't waver. No, he said, but I've thought about it. And I hate myself for it, but I have. The admission hung in the air between us, uglier than any lie. I need some space, he continued, his voice heavy with finality. Real space, not just sleeping in different rooms. I'm going to stay with Mark for a while. You're leaving? Panic, cold and sharp, clawed its way up my throat. Everyone knew. Once someone moved out, they rarely came back. He walked over to the closet and pulled out a duffel bag. The sound of the zipper was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Reality hit me with the force of a physical blow. Please, I begged, grabbing his arm. His muscles were tense beneath my fingers. Please don't leave. We can fix this. We can go to therapy. I'll do anything. He gently, but firmly, removed my hand from his arm. That's the problem, Clara, he said, his voice filled with a profound sadness. You'll do anything to keep me, except the one thing that mattered. Being honest from the beginning. I was afraid, I cried. Afraid you wouldn't love the real me. He looked at me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a flicker of the man I had married. A man full of sorrow, not anger. I never got the chance to try, did I? And then he was gone. The front door clicked shut behind him, the sound echoing the final, definitive closing of a chapter of my life. I collapsed onto our bed, my bed now, and I sobbed until my throat was raw and there were no tears left to cry. The 2 weeks Liam was gone were the longest of my life. The house was silent, too big. Every room echoed with his absence. I called, I texted, I sent long, rambling emails pouring my heart out, explaining everything, begging for another chance. Mostly, I was met with silence. A few brief, formal replies about bills or mail that needed to be picked up. I was pathetic. I drove by Mark's apartment complex a few times, just hoping for a glimpse of his car. One afternoon, I saw him. He was getting into his car with a woman I assumed was Sophie. She was pretty, but not in a flashy way. She had wavy brown hair, wore minimal makeup, and was dressed in jeans and a simple sweater. She looked wholesome, natural. The exact opposite of my carefully constructed gallery curator image. They were laughing. He threw his head back and laughed. A genuine happy sound I hadn't heard from him in months. My stomach twisted into a painful knot. I called Jenna, hoping for sympathy, for an ally. But she was surprisingly cold. "What did you expect, Clara?" she said, her voice blunt. "You built your entire relationship on a lie. I love you, girl, but even I knew this was a ticking time bomb." After 2 weeks of agonizing silence, a text from him finally appeared on my screen. "We need to talk. I'll come by the house tomorrow at 7. My heart leaped with a desperate, foolish hope. He was coming back. We were going to talk. We were going to fix this. The next evening, I cleaned the house obsessively. I showered and did my makeup. I put on a dress he used to love. When the doorbell rang at exactly 7, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the knob. The sight of him was a physical blow. He looked different. He had a new haircut, slightly shorter on the sides. He was wearing a jacket I'd never seen before. But it was more than that. Something in his posture had changed. He seemed calmer, more centered, more certain. While I had been falling apart, he had been putting himself back together. We sat at our kitchen table, the same table where we'd shared thousands of meals and made plans for our future. Now it felt like a negotiation table between two hostile strangers. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his voice steady and measured. "About us. About what happened. About what I want going forward." I held my breath, too afraid to hope, too afraid not to. "I talked to a therapist," he continued. "She helped me understand some things. About why your past hit me so hard. About what it means for us." And? I could barely get the word out. My voice was a choked whisper. He looked directly at me then, his gaze clear and unflinching. There was no anger left, only a sad, quiet resolution. "I can't do this anymore, Clara. I want a divorce." The world tilted. The floor fell away from beneath me. Even though I'd been bracing for it, hearing the words out loud sucked all the air from my lungs. "Liam, please." He held up a hand, stopping me. "Let me finish. I've thought this through. It's not about the number. It's not just about the men. It's about the deception. For 12 years, 2 years of dating, 10 years of marriage, you let me believe something that wasn't true. You watched me fall in love with a version of you that you created. You let me build my entire life, my entire future, on a foundation of lies. That's not something I can get over." "People change," I cried, desperation making my voice shrill. "The person who did those things, that's not who I am now." "If that were true," he said quietly, his words cutting deeper than any shout, "you would have told me yourself long ago. The fact that it took a drunken party game to bring it all out, that tells me everything I need to know about who you still are. You're still afraid. You're still hiding. And Sophie?" I couldn't help it. I had to ask. "Is she part of this decision?" A flash of annoyance crossed his face. "Don't do that. Don't make this about her. This is about you and me. This is about the fact that I can't trust a single memory we have together anymore." "And, are you with her now?" I pressed, the need to know overriding everything else. He sighed, a long, weary sound. "We've grown close. She's kind. She listens. But no, we're not together. I wouldn't do that while I'm still married. Unlike some people," he added, the dig landing squarely, "I believe in being honest in a relationship." "So you'll be with her after?" I said flatly. It wasn't a question. "I don't know what will happen. All I know is that I can't stay married to you." He stood up. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. I'll be fair with the settlement. The house, the accounts, we can split everything 50-50. I laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. "How generous. You get to walk away with your clean conscience while I'm the villain who ruined everything." His expression hardened. "Is that really how you see this? After everything, you still think you're the victim?" He moved toward the door. My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. This was real. "That's it?" I asked, my voice breaking. "After 10 years, you're just walking away?" He paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned back to me for the last time. "You know what's ironic, Clara? If you had told me at the beginning, all of it would have been hard. I would have been shocked. But I think I would have still loved you." I would have loved you for being brave enough to tell me the truth. He looked at me, and his eyes were filled with a decade of lost love. It's the years of lies I can't forgive, not the acts themselves. With that final, devastating twist of the knife, he opened the door and walked out of my life. This time, I knew he wasn't coming back. The divorce was swift and sterile. Liam was true to his word. Everything was split down the middle, handled through lawyers. We sold the house, our beautiful, charming house, and divided a decade of shared life via emails and spreadsheets. It was like we were business partners dissolving a failed venture, not two people who had once promised to love each other forever. I moved into a small, generic apartment across town. I took a transfer to a different branch of the gallery to avoid the pitying looks and whispered conversations. Starting over at 32 is a special kind of hell. At 22, the world is full of possibilities. At 32, you're just damaged goods. I was no longer Liam's wife. I was just Clara, the real Clara, and I had no idea who that was without a mask to hide behind. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I saw them. I was in the grocery store, debating between brands of pasta, when I saw them in the produce section. Liam and Sophie. They were picking out avocados, moving together with the easy, comfortable familiarity of a couple who just fit. They looked happy. Genuinely, breathtakingly happy. Not the strained, hollow contentment he'd shown in our last years together. He was laughing at something she said, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. It was a simple gesture, but it was a gesture he hadn't made toward me in years. It was like watching a knife twist in my own heart. I abandoned my half-filled cart and fled, breaking down completely in the sterile quiet of my own car. It wasn't just that he was with her. It was seeing with my own eyes the magnitude of what I had destroyed. He had moved on. He had found someone he could trust. Someone who gave him what I never could. Honesty from the start. The real gut punch came 3 months later. I ran into Jenna at a coffee shop. After some excruciatingly awkward small talk, she mentioned them. "Oh, have you heard? Liam and Sophie are engaged," she said, as if she were discussing the weather. "They're perfect together. So authentic, you know? No games, no secrets. It's refreshing." Each word was a dagger, but she wasn't done. "Plus," she added, casually stirring her latte, "she's pregnant. They're due in January." I spiraled after that. Hard. I started going out too much, drinking too much. I fell back into the old, destructive patterns I thought I had left behind 2 decades ago. I was hooking up with men whose names I barely bothered to learn, seeking a moment of connection in the dark that always left me feeling colder and more alone in the morning. One night, drunk and drowning in self-loathing, I did the one thing I shouldn't have. I texted him, "Congratulations on the baby. Guess you finally found someone worthy of starting a family with." His response came the next morning, and it wasn't what I expected. There was no anger, no bitterness. "Clara, please get help. I don't want this for you. We both deserve to find peace." Even after everything I had done to him, he still had enough kindness left to want me to be okay. And that kindness broke something in me that all the anger and heartbreak couldn't touch. He was right. I was punishing myself for losing him by becoming the very person I had tried so hard to escape. That text was my rock bottom. The next day, I found a therapist. I started the long, painful process of actually facing myself. Not the wild girl from college, not Liam's perfect wife, but the complicated, flawed woman who existed in between. The woman who had lied to protect herself, who had hurt the person she loved most, who had to learn to be honest, not just with others, but with herself. It's been a year since then. I'd like to say I'm healed, that I've found peace. But that would be another lie, and I'm trying to stop telling those. The truth is, I still wake up some mornings reaching for his side of the bed. I still feel a sharp physical ache when I see a man who looks like him from behind. I saw their baby announcement online. A little boy. They looked radiant. A perfect little family built on a foundation of trust. The life I could have had. The life I threw away. I'm dating again. Cautiously. I take it slow. And on the second or third date, I tell them. All of it. The good, the bad, the ugly. It's terrifying every single time. Some men get up and walk away. And it hurts. But it's a clean kind of hurt. Better to lose them with the truth out in the open than to build another beautiful house on a foundation of sand, just waiting for the tide to come in. I see it now. It was never about the number. Liam could have handled the number. What he couldn't handle was discovering that the woman he had loved, the marriage he had cherished for a decade, had never been entirely real. So here I am, starting over, trying to build an authentic life. No more masks, no more convenient omissions. Just me, flawed, complicated, and finally facing my own past. It's not the life I planned. It's not the future I thought I'd have, but it's real. And after a lifetime of pretending, maybe that's what I needed all along.